The light goes first. Below about 20 meters, the water settles into a deep, even blue, and the surface noise of the world drops away. What replaces it, sound of a different kind. A pulse at around 20 hertz. A low, repeating groan right at the edge of what human ears can register. Then the source of that sound arrives out of the gloom. A blue whale. Balaenoptera musculus, the largest animal known to have existed on Earth. A blue whale doesn't hunt you. It doesn't chase you. It doesn't even know you exist. So how can it still feel like a moving apocalypse? That phrase came from the comments on our last video. A moving apocalypse describes the sensation of scale, that thump of displaced water as 30 meters of animal slides beneath the boat. It describes human perception. It isn't a description of whale behaviour. And this video exists because the comments demanded we stop blurring those two things together. You asked for corrections. You pointed out where the last script stretched the facts, where it leaned on suspense, where it got the acoustics wrong. This is the response. An accuracy-first test of the label Gentle Giant, built on 3 standards that sensational framing usually smashes into one: physical capacity, unintended harm, and intentional aggression. Each section ends with a plain finding. No presenter shots, no fake cliffhangers, just the evidence and a verdict at the end. Start with capacity, because the scale is real. On the 20th of March 1947, a female blue whale caught in the Southern Ocean measured 27.6 meters and weighed 190 tons, with estimates running as high as 199. She remains the heaviest directly measured animal in history. The longest blue whale ever scientifically measured ran 29.9 meters from snout to tail. NOAA gives the species a working maximum of about 30 meters, or 100 feet, with typical adults running 24 to 30. Larger numbers still circulate. A 33.6-meter whale recorded at South Georgia in 1909 is the source of the old 110 feet claim, and Guinness still lists it. Modern biologists treat those early whaling measurements cautiously because logbook records from that era weren't always standardized. At the reliable end of that scale, the numbers are already difficult to hold in the mind. Most adults sit in a band of 50 to 150 metric tons, with the heaviest Antarctic females at the top. The popular 200 tons figure is a rounded ceiling, not a weighed animal. When researchers modeled maximum force output across 22 cetacean species, from bottlenose dolphins up to blue whales, the blue whale anchored the top of the scale. That force exists to move a 30-meter body through water at feeding speed, not to act on anything that shares the ocean with it. The anatomy is less dramatic than the viral version and more interesting. The upper jaw carries black baleen plates. The throat is lined with grooves that let the skin balloon outward during a lunge. When researchers dissected a stranded blue whale in 2015, the heart weighed about 180 kilograms and measured roughly 1.5 by 1.2 meters. The biggest heart on the planet, at roughly the size of a small golf cart or an upright piano. It isn't the size of a Volkswagen. It isn't 1,300 pounds. The viral claims scaled up somewhere in the retelling, and the true measurements got left behind. The tongue sits between 2.7 and 4 metric tons, comparable to a large female African elephant. A bull elephant at over 6 tons would outweigh it. The story that a human could swim through the aorta is also wrong. That vessel is large enough for a small adult to crawl through on hands and knees, nothing more. None of this describes a temperament. A heart the size of a golf cart answers a biological question. How do you move blood through a 30-meter body? A multi-ton tongue answers another. What does it cost to push water back out through the baleen? Every measurement here describes the engineering of a very large filter-feeding mammal.
Finding on capacity. Size is real, and size isn't hostility. Then sound, because that's where the comments got loudest. Blue whale calls have fundamental frequencies between about 10 and 40 hertz. Much of that range sits below the threshold of human hearing, which is why raw recordings of blue whales often sound like a distant rumble rather than a song. Discovery of sound in the sea describes the calls as pulses, grunts, groans, and moans. The source levels are enormous. Measurements dating back to Cummings and Thompson's 1971 work put blue whale calls near 188 decibels, reference to 1 micropascal, the standard underwater scale. Antarctic recordings have since measured 188 to 191, and a 2023 study in the Western Indian Ocean recorded Antarctic blue whales at 188.5, with pygmy blue whales lower at 176.8. If a call of that intensity traveled through air, it would arrive loud enough to damage human hearing. Underwater, it's simply how a 30-meter animal talks to its own species. And that is the point. These calls are communication. The song units around 16 to 20 hertz are produced by males for reproductive purposes. The steeper D calls, sweeping from about 80 down to 30 hertz, appear when whales are feeding or socializing. Low-frequency sound carries. In favorable conditions, calls are detected more than 100 kilometers from the animal that made them, which is how a species scattered across an ocean basin keeps in touch. When researchers analyzed calls off California, they described a repertoire of intense, long-duration sounds carrying extraordinary acoustic power. Power in service of contact. Then there is the correction that earned 202 engagements in the comments. Sperm whales produce clicks at 200 to 230 decibels. The word sperm appeared across 23 of the 50 comments we reviewed. Decibels appeared across 8, so let's settle it properly. That claim is consistent with published measurements. In 2003, Bertil Merle and his colleagues recorded on-axis sperm whale clicks with source levels up to 236 dB, re 1 micropascal, which makes them the most powerful sounds any animal produces. But 3 qualifications matter. First, those clicks are a directional beam, aimed forward like a flashlight, rather than radiated in all directions. Off-axis, the measured level drops sharply. Second, the underwater decibel scale uses a different reference pressure from the airborne scale. Underwater decibels are measured against 1 micropascal, decibels in air against 20. Because the references differ by a factor of 20, the same physical pressure reads roughly 26 dB higher on the underwater scale. A sperm whale click at 230 dB underwater isn't the same event as 230 dB in air. The scales aren't interchangeable, and anyone who compares them directly is comparing 2 different languages. Third, and decisively, intensity isn't aggression. Sperm whale clicks are echolocation, a biosonar used to find squid in near-total darkness. The same logic cuts both ways. If loudness alone proved hostility, the largest voice in the ocean would be a courtship display, not a weapon. Finding on sound. Power is a tool of communication, not evidence of intent. The third standard, intent, is where gentle is actually decided. Blue whales are filter feeders. Their diet is almost exclusively krill, shrimp-like crustaceans, most of them a few centimeters long. The largest predator in Earth's history feeds on prey smaller than a human hand. Their bodies are purpose-built for exactly that. Instead of teeth, baleen plates. A throat only about the width of a hand. The feeding apparatus has no mechanism for grasping, biting, or swallowing a large animal. A blue whale couldn't eat a human even if it wanted to, and the evidence says it doesn't want to. Across the scientific literature, across NOAA's species records, across the International Whaling Commission's vessel strike database, there are no documented, credible cases of a blue whale intentionally hunting, chasing, or attacking a human. not one. The honest caveat: absence of documented attacks isn't absolute proof of safety. Encounters at sea are often unobserved, and the historical record is incomplete. But after a century of industrial whaling, decades of whale watching, and countless recreational encounters, the pattern holds. The behaviour that occasionally brings a blue whale close to a small boat is entirely krill-directed. Lunge feeding works like this. The whale accelerates to 4 or 5 meters per second, opens its mouth to roughly 90 degrees, and engulfs a volume of water larger than its own body. It then spends the next 40 seconds or more pushing the water back out through the baleen with its tongue. When krill are dense, blue whales turn these lunges into elaborate maneuvers, steep pitches, sudden rolls, even a full 360-degree rotation. That roll was documented in 2013 by a Stanford team led by Jeremy Goldbogen. It isn't a hunting behaviour pointed at anything but krill. The energy maths is punishing, which is why lunge feeding only pays off at very high krill densities. Blue whales are picky eaters because they can't afford not to be. A typical foraging dive runs under 300 meters, lasts 5 to 15 minutes, and delivers about 4 lunges. In peak feeding season, they do this hundreds of times a day. That same machinery produced the one well-documented small boat incident involving a blue whale. Off San Diego in 2014, a small inflatable whale-watching boat carrying a photographer and a captain sat with its engine off, more than 100 yards from a group of feeding whales. Lunge-feeding blue whales surfaced beneath it and capsized it. Both men came out with minor bruises. The whales were feeding. The boat was in the wrong place at the wrong moment. Now watch how blue whales behave when they notice a vessel, because the pattern is consistent. In 2015, researchers tagged 9 blue whales through 20 ship passages. When a ship came close, the whales made shallow response dives in 55% of passages. They almost never moved sideways, and they never charged. The study's authors concluded that a blue whale's avoidance is limited to slow descents. That, in the words of the Stanford summary, blue whales often can't avoid cargo ships at all. In the St. Lawrence estuary, vessels within 400 meters cut surface times by about half, shortened dives by a third, and reduced breathing rates by half. In 2022, researchers watched a mother-calf pair off Southern California. The calf approached a stationary boat, then fled the moment the engine started. The calf's response was flight, not curiosity, and nursing was only observed when the boat was gone. Earlier work found whales reacted only when ships passed within about 900 meters and didn't leave their feeding areas even with more than 5 vessel passages a day. Throughout the literature, the response to disturbance is the same. Sink, shorten the dive, or leave. Never approach. Never chase. The strongest counter-argument to gentle is real, and it deserves a straight answer. Unintended harm is documented, and it can be fatal, but the direction of that harm matters. Between 1988 and 2007, 21 blue whales died along the California coast. 8 of those deaths were confirmed ship strikes. In 2007 alone, 4 blue whales were struck and killed in or near the Santa Barbara Channel. NOAA's Large Whale Ship Strike database, compiled in 2002, held 292 confirmed or possible collisions, including 8 blue whales. Off Sri Lanka between 2010 and 2014, 14 large whales died in ship strikes, most of them blue whales. Modelling by Rockwood and colleagues in 2017 put blue whale deaths from ship strikes on the US West Coast at 7.8 times the level NOAA considers sustainable. Their 2021 follow-up estimated 8.9 blue whales killed per year during the summer and autumn season. A 2024 study in Science found shipping overlaps 92% of blue whale range, while mandatory protection covers just 0.54% of collision hotspots. and every one of those numbers is an undercount. Approximately 16% of photo-identified blue whales in the Gulf of St. Lawrence carry vessel collision scars. Notice where the harm falls. In nearly every documented case, it falls on the whale. A blue whale doesn't endanger a ship by aggression. It endangers itself by failing to get out of the way. Set the two standards side by side. On intentional aggression, the verdict is unambiguous. No evidence. When a genuine threat does appear, blue whales flee. The first confirmed records of orcas killing adult blue whales were published in 2022. An attack started by 12 orcas, including 6 females, with at least 50 arriving to feed on the carcass. The blue whale's response was flight. Its behavioral repertoire contains defense and avoidance. It contains no documented human-directed aggression. On complete harmlessness, the verdict is different. A lunge-feeding blue whale can capsize a small boat without ever registering it. A 100-ton animal in a shipping lane can destroy itself and damage a vessel. The consequences are real, but they are accidental. Accidentally causing damage is still gentle, not intentional hunt. That line is the argument in one sentence. Before the verdict, the transparency the last video owed you. That video drew hundreds of comments. Of those, we reviewed the 50 that carried 94% of the reported engagement. That is roughly 13% of the total. Not a random sample, but the comments that drew the most likes, replies, and arguments. Engagement counts don't track unique users, so when we say viewers raised a point, we mean the most engaged viewers did. We can't tell you what everyone thought. The signal was clear anyway. Sperm appeared in 23 of those 50 comments, mostly because of the loudness claim addressed here. Corrections about whale law accounted for 476 engagements across 17 of the 50 comments. Several of those corrections were legitimate, and they changed this video. The decibel section now carries the full caveat about underwater reference scales. The presentation complaints changed the production too. Blurred face presenter shots drew 232 engagements across 26 comments and were described as really jarring. So there are none in this video. The old structure was criticized as AI-like suspense build-up. So every section here ends with a finding instead of a tease. When the audience identifies the framing as the problem, the honest fix is to change the framing. So the verdict on the available evidence. Blue whales are physically overwhelming. At 30 meters and up to 190 tons, they can cause serious harm without intending to, and the ship strike record proves the consequences are real. But the evidence does not establish intentional aggression. There is no documented case of a blue whale hunting, chasing, or attacking a human. On the evidence, gentle is compatible with not harmless. It depends on which standard you choose. If gentle means non-aggressive in intent, the blue whale qualifies, and the evidence is strong. If it means completely harmless in effect, it does not, and on that standard, almost no large animal in nature would qualify. The word would stop meaning anything. Which standard should define gentle? Intent, behavior, or physical consequences? The evidence for each standard now sits in front of you. The answer changes the closer you look, and that is the point. One last context. The label gentle giant is a human phrase, not a scientific one. The animal never agreed to it. The only accurate test is the evidence, and the evidence now has a shape. Deep below the surface, the blue whale is still singing at 20 hertz. It isn't singing for us. It isn't singing at us. And that, on the evidence, is the most accurate meaning of gentle giant there is.